there's just always gratitude in the stressful moments. You may not see it in that moment, and that's okay. Feel your feels. Although I was a little embarrassed in the moment, I was crying in the airport because I was tired. I wanted to see my son, and things didn't work out the way we thought that they would, but I ended up being so grateful later. And that's what I love about hindsight. I try not to stay too much in the past, but I love seeing things in hindsight because you get to see how life is always flowing and working out for your highest good. I believe that to my core. Welcome to Alignment Adventures. This is a podcast where we explore what it means to live a fulfilling, aligning, and present life. I'm your host, Lindsay Tanner, and I am so grateful that you are here. Hello, my loves. I am so grateful and so excited that you're here today, that you press play, that you're sitting here with me, or whatever you're doing, you're with me in this time and space. And I just want to sit here and catch up with all of you because I just realized it's been almost a month since I've sat down, recorded, and published a podcast, which is crazy because for almost 3.5 years, really for the first 3 years, the past half year has been more sporadic. I was so consistent in publishing episodes, and that was a huge part of my identity with this podcast, was creating consistent episodes to help all of you live your most aligned, fulfilling, and present life. And they're a lot more sporadic now, and I'm learning to embrace it and truly flow with this season and flow with what life is bringing me. And that's not always easy because, like we've talked about many times, our mind has a lot of opinions on what we should, I put in quotes because you can't see me, should be doing. And you know how I feel about that word. But I really feel like I've come to a more peaceful place around the sporadicness of my podcast episodes. And I'm just so grateful that you're still here with me listening. I truly hope these episodes have benefited you in so many ways, and I hope you go back and listen if you need to, especially when I'm more sporadic with the episodes. If you're needing some more alignment, feel free to go back and listen, or maybe you found some other podcasts that you've really been enjoying. I know I've been doing that. I've been getting into some podcasts that I used to listen to. I'm listening to them now. And I'm just flowing with the seasons, guys, just flowing with the seasons. So another big thing that you may have noticed if you follow me on Instagram, or if you know me personally, you know that I just got back from a 2-week trip in Italy, which I am so beyond grateful that I got to take that trip. I do not take it for granted at all. The way it worked out was so smooth and such a blessing. The fact that we have grandparents here that are able to help with Arlo since he stayed back. Even though I will say we saw so many families, including ones that were there for the wedding that we went to, that is why we were there, that brought their children, and that really inspired me. So I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here, but I just got back from that trip. I am feeling so refreshed and rejuvenated, and that's what I love about travel, is the fact that it just cracks you open. It cracks your mind open, your awareness open to all the possibilities. When you go to a new place or have new experiences or see new people, new ways of living, it just totally opens you up to new possibilities, which is such a good connection to what I want to discuss today. But before we do that, I do want to just share some takeaways from my trip that I feel like are applicable to Alignment Adventures, to the mission of this podcast. And then we're going to get into that topic of just opening yourself up and suspending disbelief. So I have some notes on my phone that I took on the plane ride back that I just want to share with you all. Again, I'm so grateful for this trip. If you are curious, you can go and see my Italy highlights on Instagram. I have a bunch of different posts, and then you can see the highlights on my profile. Hopefully you know what I mean by that. And I'm also working on multiple Italy vlogs for my YouTube channel, but that's going to take a while because I have so much random footage from this trip. But really my intention before the trip, which I like to do that with certain things in my life. Like I did that with pregnancy, with Arlo, and this trip, and when I have other trips, and when I'm about to do something, I like to set an intention just from all the work I've done in here and all the things I've learned. I feel like that really helps. But my intention for this trip was presence and fun, and I feel like I really was able to soak both of those things into the trip. I felt like Steven and I were so present. Of course, it was hard because we missed our little buddy, I call him, my schnookum, so much. We FaceTimed him every day, which thank the universe for FaceTime, and for my parents and Steven's parents for being flexible and FaceTiming us every single day. But besides that, I truly feel like we were so present, just like soaking up the energy of Italy. Like if you've been to Italy, or if you've really just been anywhere outside of the United States, you know how like the energy is just different than the States. Some good, some bad. Like there's pros and cons to it all, but the energy is just so different. It truly is like that more relaxed, go with the flow, slowing down and being in the moment, which aligns with my intention. But like that is the energy of Italy, at least the places we were at. In the first week, we were in Sicily for a wedding. Stephen was actually in the wedding. It was so beautiful. The location, the wedding, the couple, the events we went to, the people we met, all of it, just beautiful is the word that I have to describe it. But I was just very grateful that I was able to exercise being present, because I'm always trying to do that all the time in all chapters of my life. So the fact that I was able to do that on this trip, like really kind of boosted my confidence in being more present, if that makes sense. So I'm excited to carry that on into the summer, because we're about to be in summer officially in June. I mean, I feel like June, the start of June, everyone considers summer, but the summer solstice isn't till the end of June, and you guys know I'm all about celebrating those things. But I want to bring presents into this summer and create like a summer bucket list and just really juice this summer and enjoy it with Arlo. So I'm digressing as usual, but some other things that I really tried to soak up on this trip was just how good it felt to travel again. I felt like that was a big part of Steven and I's identity as a couple, I guess you could say. Like that's the best way I can word it, is we traveled a lot before we had Arlo. And we've traveled with Arlo. Like, my goodness, we took him to Mexico. We took him to Flagstaff. He's flown. He's gone on trips. And we're going to continue taking him on trips. But to go on like such an adventurous trip like this, like it took 4 flights to get there, which that's a whole nother story. I want to have Steven on to talk about like travel credit cards and points and lounges, because I could talk about that this whole episode and I don't want to do that, but that was a game changer. But it was a more adventurous trip, and it just was so aligning for my soul to be back in that energy of traveling and seeing new places. Like each place we went, I felt like it just kept getting better and better. And maybe that was just my outlook on all of it. I'm very easily amused. I'm very easy to impress. I truly am very easy to impress. But every place we went, I was just like, oh my goodness, this is awesome. Like we had a layover in Switzerland, and I just felt it in my soul. It's like, I need to go back to Switzerland. This looks beautiful. The land just looked amazing. I got to see the Swiss Alps from the plane. It just, when you see something and it just hits you in your core, that was definitely one of those places. But even after that, like, it just felt so good to travel. Like, it just reminds me of things that I loved to do before becoming a mom. And then again, this could be a whole nother episode too. This is how my brain works. If you haven't noticed by now, what is this, episode 160 something? Lindsay's brain is all over the place. But that was something I put an intention out before I became a mother, and something I think about now was like, I just didn't want to lose myself. And it is so easy to do. One, that's a common narrative, right? That like motherhood is all consuming, which it is. It is, but you also get to create your reality. You get to create your story. And since I've had Arlo, it's felt so good for me to continue to do things that I did before I had him, because I'm still Lindsay. At my core, I'm still me. I'm still my soul. I'm still Lindsay. That's another rabbit hole we can go down, like what we are at our core. But at my core, I'm still who I am. So bringing those things back in now as a mom, it just felt really good. It just felt really, really good. And I'm also, with that being said, very inspired to continue to travel with Arlo and future children in the future. Like, that was a whole thing that we were doing last year at this time, was trying to travel. But I just felt very inspired seeing all the families that were traveling with their kids. Like, I want to give Arlo those experiences too. So it was like feeling two things at the same time at this whole trip. Like, obviously I was having so much fun and I missed him so much, and I was enjoying traveling with Steven and I and like having that time, but also feeling so inspired to travel as a family. Like, do you feel me on this? Do you ever feel like two opposite ends of the spectrum at the same time? Like, that is me most of the time, which can feel very exhausting. But it's also normal, and it's okay. It's okay if you feel like the highest of the high and lowest of the low at the same time. Like, that happens to me. I want to know if you experience the same thing. So the next note I had in here about my travels and just takeaways I wanted to share. I already talked about this, but just to reiterate, I love how travel, especially to new places, which I've actually been to Italy before, but we went to some new places. Like, I never went to Sicily. So going to new places truly just cracks you open, which I think is so beneficial to like just be kind of mind blown by going to new places and experiencing new things. That's really going to connect with like the meat of this episode, with suspending our disbelief. Another thing that I was really reflecting on, again, on our plane ride home as I took these notes, was every time you travel, you change just a little bit. Maybe it's a lot with some trips, maybe it's just a teeny bit with others. But I think that every time you have new experiences, go to new places, meet new people, see new cultures, yada, 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 it changes you a little bit. And that's beautiful. I know change can be scary. It's scary for a lot of people. It's scary for me too sometimes. I also love change sometimes. I'm that weird person that also loves change and new and novel things. But every time you travel, it just changes you a little bit. And I think that is so beautiful. And again, one of the reasons I freaking love to travel. And I don't want to do it full time. That's a trait of Lindsay. Whenever I like something, I think I need to do it to the extreme degree and be like a full-time traveler. No, I love traveling and then coming back home and having like the comforts of our home. It felt so good to be back and be able to cook my breakfast that I like and have my smoothies and like catch up on some YouTube videos that I've been watching and sleep in our bed and like have all of our stuff. It feels so good. Like, there's no feeling like the feeling when you get home from a trip. But I just think it's interesting to consider like how travel can just change you a little bit each time. And I think that's why it's such a popular like hobby and thing to do for so many people, because I think on a soul level, we all know that we're here to evolve and experience new things, and travel is just such a beautiful example of that. So I think I've hit that point well enough on the head. So let's move on to some other notes that I had. This trip also helped me remember that you can always, always, always have gratitude, even in the really stressful moments. We were lucky that this trip went very smoothly. There were only 2 times that I felt very stressed, and one was trying to catch a bus in Sicily. The bus system was just a little unknown, and we didn't speak the language, and we were trying to figure that out and make sure we got to places at a certain time to check into our Airbnb and then to catch our flight to Rome. So that was a little stressful. And then on the way back, we ended up missing a connection. Long story short, we had to stay in Toronto one more day. But even in the stressful moments, like, this was not my first time crying in a terminal. I guess it's not a terminal, at the gate check place. Reference the episode where I was supposed to go to Africa and didn't. That was like one of my first episodes. Even in that moment when I felt like so many emotions were coming up, and I was like, Steven, thank you for figuring this out, because I can't stop crying. I think because I was just excited to see Arlo. I thought we were going to make this flight, and then it turns out we couldn't. Anyways, it was very emotionally heavy, stressful. If you travel trying to catch flights, it's not always the easiest and most fun. I ended up having gratitude for that moment because we were able to stay the night in Toronto. Luckily, the airline was very amicable and like helped us find a hotel. And then we had that next morning to like catch up on some of our favorite travel YouTubers. One of them that actually lives in Toronto. So we got to watch this video of them in Toronto when we were in Toronto. And that was just such a cool moment. And it was like, ended up being a very peaceful way to end the trip. So I share this because something that went completely not the way we wanted it to. Like it went the opposite way. We missed our flight. We were supposed to be home that night. I wanted to see Arlo. I missed him so much. We ended up staying an extra night, and it ended up being a beautiful gift and beautiful way to end our trip. Like a little bit more of alone time and rest time before we came back to our life here, which also I love our life here. And I feel like sometimes I'm scared to say that, like that I love my life so much, but I do. And of course, there's times that are stressful, like being a mom to a toddler and trying to balance like my business with the podcast and being a stay-at-home mom. Like, again, another rabbit hole I could go down. But the point of this story, I keep digressing, and that's just who I am. I'm not going to apologize for it, even though I want to. The point of this segment is like there's just always gratitude in the stressful moments. You may not see it in that moment, and that's okay. Feel your feels. Although I was a little embarrassed in the moment, I was crying in the airport because I was tired. I wanted to see my son, and things didn't work out the way we thought that they would. But I ended up being so grateful later. And that's what I love about hindsight. You know, I try not to stay too much in the past, but I love seeing things in hindsight because you get to see how life is always flowing and working out for your highest good. I believe that to my core. And I know there's always going to be extreme cases, but I just wanted to share this one in hopes to remind you that even when you're going through something very difficult, of course, feel your feels, like allow yourself to dive into what you're truly feeling. And then I would be so interested to see how, like in hindsight or later on, you can find gratitude for those really hard times. Because like we've mentioned so many times, gratitude is one of the highest vibration feelings that you can have. And it's always just such a beautiful place to come back to. So this trip was a beautiful reminder of that. Even when you're stressed out, even when you're in a bad situation, like try to find the gratitude. Even if you can't in that moment, later on, can you find the gratitude? And it's just such a powerful practice to have. I'm also very grateful, and I think this is why we love travel so much. People may disagree with me on this one, but there's a lot of figuring things out with traveling. And I will be the first to admit that Steven planned a lot of this trip. He's a planner. He loves it. Why take that away from him, right? I'm not the planner. But even in like the thick of it, like we still have to both figure things out along the way. Like I'm not just, he kept calling it the passenger princess, which I was sometimes. But that's because he was the one who had service. I only had service when we had Wi-Fi. But anyways, like there's a lot of figuring things out when you're traveling, especially with a partner. Like they say that's such a good way to know if like you're dating someone, if they're the one. Go and travel with them. Steven and I did that back in 2018. We went to Iceland and stayed in a car/van, the very beginning of our van obsession. And I feel like after that trip, we're like, okay, like we're probably in this for the long haul because we were able to survive in this van in Iceland together. But that's the thing about travel. You have to figure out so much and like really have to work together and problem solve. And it's just such a beautiful opportunity to grow with your partner. So that's another reason I love travel. Does it feel like I'm just like over here trying to promote travel? Like go and plan a trip, even if it's like in your state, even if it's the next town, like go and travel. It's so good. So good. I also noticed this, and I think I have a whole episode about this when we went to Palm Springs, but some of the best experiences we had in Italy are when you have zero expectations, because expectations can sometimes rob you of your experience because you've put this experience on such a pedestal. Like you think it's going to be such an amazing thing, and many times it can meet your expectations, but if it doesn't, that can be very disappointing. But what I've noticed is when you have zero expectations, then you're just open to what the experience brings to you, and then it's like you have nothing blocking that experience, no preconceived notions, no nothing. And you can truly just be present, be in the moment. And those are my favorite moments in travel, when I have like zero expectations, which can be hard because, like I mentioned, you have to plan your trip, you have to prepare. But it's just a good reminder, like in life, how can we drop expectations? Which leads into something I'm going to talk about later. I keep hinting about it. We're going to get there, I promise. Just have a few more notes. But another thing that came up for me, and this is such a common theme for Lindsay, and still working through it. Like I said, it's a spiral. Many things in our life are a spiral, and we keep coming back to it and just learning a little bit more. But that is this theme of guilt. Like, I just have this common theme of guilt in my life. Like, who am I to deserve these incredible experiences? Like, I want everyone, if you desire to have this experience, to have this experience. Like, I wish I could gift it to every single person. And it's just this idea of like worthiness that keeps coming up again and again. Well, first off, I do know this as one of my truths, even though my mind is still accepting it. We're all worthy of whatever we desire. Like, in your heart and your soul, if you desire something, you are undeniably worthy of it. Second, I have intentionally created this life that I'm living. Like, I have made decisions, I have made choices, I have taken actions to get to where I'm at in this point in case. Like, I have evolved, and I've shared a lot of the things I've learned along the way here on the podcast to be where I am today. And there's no shame in that. Like, if nothing, that should show you like the power of creating an intentional life and practicing some of these practices. Not to say I'm like living the most lavish lifestyle, because I'm not. I'm living a very modest lifestyle, and one that makes me really happy. Like, I'm very happy in the day-to-day small moments of this life. But the point I'm trying to make with this is sometimes I just feel guilty for having such beautiful experiences. Like, I want to share it with everyone. I want everyone to be in this moment. I want everyone to go on this trip if that is something they desire. And I just want to remind you, if there is something you're desiring, maybe it's a trip like this or something else, you have the power to create that. You are the creator of your reality. That is the motto of this podcast. And sometimes it just takes time, and there's things to work through, and you're evolving and you're growing, and things don't happen right away, and that's okay. But just like enjoying the small moments while practicing gratitude and practicing presence, that's how you create the life of your dreams, while also following your excitements, all the things we talk about. So I just feel like this is a long way of me saying, like, I hope all the things that I share on here just inspire you to remember the power that you have within you to create the life that you want, whether it's traveling or staying at home or being a homemaker or being a movie star or whatever it is. Like, you have the power to create that. You truly do. You are a limitless being. Okay, hit that one on the head. Okay, I just have to, I have to mention this because we spent 2 weeks in Italy, in Europe. The mentality over there, I've kind of already mentioned this, it's a little more laid back, a little more go with the flow, slower, but also they just seem to care more. And what I mean by this is, one, they just seem to care more about the quality of their food. Like, even the mediocre food that we had was so freaking good. Like, the quality of the food there is just unmatched. And I'm sure there's a lot we could go into, a lot of rabbit holes about like our food industry and how that all is working, but like just being able to experience the food over there, and also on the streets, like, not only do they have recycling everywhere, but they have like compost, they have plastic, they have glass, like it's all separated and it's everywhere. They just seem to care a lot more about all the things, from the food to our planet. It's refreshing. Honestly, it's refreshing, because I think we've just forgotten those things over here. And I had a really interesting conversation with one of the girls on our tour of wine country in the Chianti region of Tuscany, which was magical and amazing. That's another thing that I wish I could gift all of you. That experience going on a wine tour in Tuscany was amazing. Anyways, we learned so much about like how they grow the grapes to how they make the wine, and how they just care about the process so much. And I think a lot of that is connected to the fact that these families have lived on this land for hundreds, if not, 1,000 or more years. Like they've lived there for a long time. And when you think about it, we are all like relatively new to our land here. I'm speaking for us in the United States. I know I have some international listeners, but here in the United States, like our families are relatively new unless you do have indigenous backgrounds, which is a whole nother like sort of feeling that you have connected to the land. But my point I'm trying to make is that we've really only lived on the United States, our families, for like a few generations at most. Like I know my great grandparents came from Italy. Like they lived in Italy and came here. Same on the other side, like just a few generations back, they lived in Scotland. So it's like we're not as connected to our land as they are because they have such intention. Like even talking to the people that own these vineyards, like they know for generations and generations, their family is going to use this land to grow grapes and grow olives, to make olive oil and wine. So they treat the land with so much care and so much intention. Like I just feel like we've lost that over here. And maybe that is due to the fact that we haven't been on this land for that long. Like our country is relatively new in terms of like timeline and all that. So just an interesting conversation, something interesting to ponder. And I know that is something I've started to care about more. As I've done more internal work, I've started to care more about externals like our planet and the environment and nature. And not to mention, like being in nature feels so good. Like my guests mention that all the time. That is their aligning activity, to be in nature. So it's like, it's just refreshing to be in Europe and be in a culture that just cares so much about the land and they feel so connected to it. It just inspires me to keep embodying that as much as I can. I'm not going to do it perfectly here, but just like the little micro habits here and there to like care for our land and care for our bodies and care about the quality of our food, I kept telling Steven, and I don't want to be in this energy, but I'm like, we should be more angry that like our food isn't this quality, the quality that they have there. Like we should be more angry about that, but it's a rabbit hole. We're not going to go there. All in all, I am feeling so refreshed after this trip. I'm excited. It kind of felt like this interesting event as we head into like the next season of life, which is like parenthood and traveling with Arlo and all that comes with that. So it's just like a fun thing for Steven and I to do. We love adventures. We love traveling, feeling refreshed as we head into this next season. Okay. Let's talk about the thing that I really wanted to bring, which now looking at the time, maybe I should have made it a totally different episode. But we're here. I've mentioned it, so we're going to talk about it. And that is the idea of suspending disbelief. Now, I have to give a shout out to Kim Orphan. I interviewed her a few episodes back. She is the owner of the Healing Path, the studio and retreat center that I teach yoga at, which I'm still teaching yoga. It's kind of sporadic now because our schedule's been crazy, but it is so much fun teaching yoga there. I love it every time I teach a class. Like I just feel like I get into the flow. Like I totally get into the flow when I'm teaching yoga there. Like when we talk about channeling or getting to alter states, like something takes over my body and I'm not myself when I'm teaching yoga. It's just really fun for me and very aligning for me and hopefully aligning for all the people that come. Anyway, she mentioned on her episode the power of suspending disbelief. And I've mentioned this with my takeaways from my trip. Like the best times that I had were when I had no expectations, and going somewhere new just totally cracks open your awareness. Being in that open energy, being able to release like all the doubts and disbelief you have about something, like, no, this isn't possible for me, or there's no way that that's true, or we're so rooted in disbelief. Sometimes it's so easy to be in that space. Like, no, there's no way that's possible. Like, what would it feel like to just suspend that for a little while? You don't even have to totally release it, but just like let it float away for a little bit and see what it feels like to be in that openness, to be in that curious energy, to be in like that observer energy where anything is possible. Because that's true. Like we mentioned, you create your reality and anything is possible for you. What happens is we get into autopilot. We get into like just this like almost kind of robotic mode, which is easy to do when you're burnout and you're exhausted and you think this is the only way that like my life can go. Like you're just trying to survive. Like I get that. If you're just trying to survive, like do what you need to do to survive. But when you can go beyond that and get your basic needs met and just kind of be in a space of like openness, that is such a powerful place to be. Like that is the number one thing that blocks us from creating all the things we want in our life, from manifesting, the buzzword, all the things we want in our life, is we have so much resistance. We have a long list, books, tomes, people might say, of reasons why this is not possible for us. We could list a million reasons why this is not possible for us, when really so many of those reasons are just mind stories. They're just beliefs we picked up from someone else. They're just beliefs we picked up from our culture or the way we grew up or experiences. Those mind stories don't have to be your truth. You have total autonomy and sovereignty and choice when it comes to what you believe and what you choose to think and how you choose to act from those beliefs. And I feel like such a beautiful place to start is just suspending your disbelief. And I want to connect this to an episode I did not too long ago, which I totally want to get back into, my spiritual and scientific episodes. It's been so fun bringing those together. But I want to bring in epigenetics. Like literally what we think and believe affects our genetics and how our genes are expressed. So if you can get into that energy of just being open and just releasing for a little bit, just pushing aside that disbelief for just a little bit, be curious about how that affects your health, how that affects your body, how that affects how you're showing up in the day-to-day. Like just be curious with it. Be curious about being curious. What I'm saying here is not lost on me. I'm saying be curious about being curious, but truly just be curious with like, can I release this for a little bit? And that's why meditation is so important, because it helps you get in that energy of just observing your thoughts. Sometimes you don't even know you have those thoughts that are limiting you. You have no idea how you've gotten into this spot in life and you're like, why is this happening to me? It's so easy to get into victim mentality. Observing your thoughts is a beautiful place to start, even though it can seem scary, because then you can see, oh, like I believe this to be true, but is that true? And this is what I've thought since I was a little girl or a little boy, but is that my truth? Do I want to keep believing that? There is so much power in that. So I hope this episode inspired you to just continue to suspend those beliefs. I'm even trying to do that with things that like, there's still things that like fire me up in terms of, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole, but like in terms of like what other people truly believe. Like some people are so convicted in their beliefs, and I respect that to a degree. Like when people are really convicted to their beliefs, I respect it. Everyone's got to do what resonates with them. But I'm really trying to suspend my disbelief. Like I have things that I believe at my core, but can I still be open? Can I still be open to like how this world works? Because I think the way this world works is more magical and magnificent than we can even imagine, than we can even fathom. And I just love that possibility. I've realized in this past year that I thrive off possibilities. Like that is one of my favorite feelings, is having possibilities. Like people ask me, where do you see yourself in 5-10 years? And I'm like, I have no idea. There are a million possibilities. There are quite a few possibilities that I'd be very happy with, but I feel like the ones that I haven't even imagined or allowed myself to create are the ones that are going to surprise me and delight me the most. And I love being surprised. Like I said, I kind of thrive off change and being surprised. And I just feel like that's a really fun and aligning way to live, at least for me. But I respect the way that everyone else wants to live. And I just share this in hopes that it inspires you, kind of opens your mind a little bit more. Again, that's why I love travel. That's why I love talking about these things, because I love opening my mind. I love movies that like break my mind, that I'm like, what just happened? Like things that make me question everything. That is my jam, and that is why I share this. So I I hope something from this rambly episode was useful. If it was, please share it with me on Instagram. I love hearing your feedback. Sometimes it can just feel like I'm talking to a microphone over here, which is literally what I'm doing. But when I get to hear the feedback from all of you, it just really helps bridge that connection. I just love talking to all of you about all of these things. So share any takeaways with me over on Instagram. You can tag me, just screenshot the episode, share your takeaways at Lindsay with an A, M as in Michelle, Tanner. Please share this episode with anyone that you think needs to hear this message. I'm so grateful when you do that. That is the best way to help support this podcast in a free way. Also, another way to help support this podcast is just rate and leave a review on Apple iTunes or on Spotify. And like I mentioned, I can't even remember when I mentioned it. I think it was a few podcast episodes ago. I revamped my program, Discover Your Internal Guidance. It's just a fun mini course, self-guided, to help you reconnect to you. There are 4 lessons with yoga flows, meditations, talk videos. I have bonus videos on there, so much. You can use code GOINGWITHIN for 50% off. A few of you have already taken advantage of that, and I hope it's helping you so much. So go and check that out. I will link it in the show notes if you're interested. And I'm just sending you all so much love, so much gratitude that you are here with me on this alignment adventure. And of course, I will see you in the next episode of Alignment Adventures.